I'm Iman, and this is Recovering Strong Black Woman, where we talk about everything from wellness, manifestation, to ultimately living life on your own damn terms. Today, we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart, which is therapy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey, and hopefully, everyone benefits from my insight. So, I have been officially in therapy for a year and a half, and I will say it has been the most transformative experience, investment that I have ever made into myself. Um, I've always been a very analytical person. So if I was going through something, I can make an action plan and I can, journal it out. But what therapy really taught me was the benefit of talking about my problems out loud, real time, and that things really began to heal way faster, right? I think just in the black community, we are taught to be so resilient, right? Like that's a badge of honor. You're so strong. You're so strong. And we're taught we're either taught or modeled not telling people what's going on with you. Yeah. So, those are things that, I really had to like come to terms with. What really got me into therapy was a very bad breakup. And I knew once that was like done, I remember having a very intentional conversation with myself, and I said, never again will I be going through an experience like this. And not to say that the weight of what happened in the relationship was on the other person's hand, but knowing that I continued to manifest the same type of experience was something I knew that was a part of me, right? It was I would say my therapy journey was a selfish journey. And it had to be. It was what I needed to say, what I needed to prioritize. And it was probably the first time in my entire life where I was steadfast in doing whatever the hell I wanted to do for my own wellness, right? So I wasn't prioritizing anybody else. Well, once again, I think it's modeled quite often in African American communities. And I really got okay with being selfish and saying, oh no, this is my time. So that's kind of how I started my journey. I will say before starting therapy, I knew I wanted to talk to a therapist for quite some time, even leading up to actually going to a therapist. I would say since I was young, I remember when I was younger having like panic attacks. In like elementary school, I remember like the first time I had a panic attack, I was probably like 8. So when my body and how I kind of managed stress when I was much younger was hold it in until I couldn't anymore, and then my body like literally just breaks down and explodes, and that kind of manifested in a panic attack where I just feel overwhelmed and not knowing what to do. And it was interesting because even as I think back to panic attacks, on the other side of a panic attack just felt like relief. It was like like I felt like a tea kettle for a very long time. So that was my experience, even from a very young age of just anxiety and just not being able to manage like emotions, not knowing how to express emotions essentially. Um, so that happened. I would say throughout my adulthood, I always managed, stress or anxiety kind of like different ways. When I was younger in my 20s, not always well, right? But as I've grown older, I really just prioritize like wellness, mindfulness, meditation, all the things that I think are really have integrated to my process. But uh, I would still say like I need to talk to somebody. And the real thing that kind of pushed me over the edge where I knew I was like in a state for several years and just really wanted to talk to someone was when my dad passed away. My dad passed away. It was very unexpected. And it like it took my breath away. I pride myself on being very spiritual and connected, and for a long time in my vision of how it should have went, I felt like I should have known. I should have felt it in my being. I should have been able to disrupt whatever happened, and really no one could, right? I mean, it was unexpected and it took my breath away, and I kind of managed through those feelings for like a couple of years. And I knew like seasons come up, and when you lose someone, like there's a lot of shit that can just be triggering, like let's keep it real. But the thing that I'll tell you about therapy from even my own assessment, you can only go and do it when you're ready to do it. it worked out so well how I met my therapist. Like, it was divine alignment. But I will tell you, there's no shame in not being there right today. But I will say, just continue to kind of think, like, can this benefit me? I would tell y'all, it's benefit your girl. It really has. It's been an amazing experience for me. So, my dad passing was, one of the big catalysts that I knew I was processing. I knew the other thing was just like work. I was working my butt off. One thing that I knew from a very young age, I said when I went to college, when I had all my internships, whatever, I wasn't going to be broke as an adult. I wasn't, right? So I was going to get my coin. I was going to secure the bag, period. And that became a part of my adult identity too. So I think that too was something, that strong black woman, oh, I got this, I'm gonna go do X, Y, and Z. I think that became a badge of honor too. That was a weight that was also essential for me going to therapy. And like I said, the third one was just a tough ass breakup, and just realizing that I was settling in a lot of different areas of my life. And like I said, that's not about anybody, that's about me. It's about me not, at that moment, saying I'm worthy of everything I want in my career, in my love life, in my personal life, in any aspect, right? How I spend the days, thinking that I wasn't worthy or wasn't in alignment. So that's kind of was the start. So once that happened, I would say, like I said, the breakup was like the final, like the straw breaking the camel's back. Because even between going to therapy, there were other things that I've done, right? So I'm big on Reiki, so I did energy work to kind of release, be mindful of stress. I've gone to a lot of spiritual retreats that have all been super, super helpful with me in my journey. But baby, nothing replaced my therapist, okay? I love my therapist. Let's talk about how I found my therapist. I'm not going to say her name here because, no shade, but she's mine. She's mine. But I do think that everyone has their own, mind. This is my therapist. And I think what everybody is looking for is completely different. And I think that's one thing we don't talk about far enough. So let's talk about my journey of finding my therapist. So how I found my therapist was, first, no joke, I had a very clear intention. I said, universe, help me find the therapist that I need to support my spiritual, mental, physical being. And I was just I paused. Before I Googled, I was like, help me find the person. Knowing that would too, if I believe in law of attraction, why wouldn't I manifest the perfect therapist? So think about that too, right? So if anybody subscribes to those beliefs of, law of attraction, what you think you become, what you think about constantly you become, I constantly was just thinking about, I'm about to find my perfect therapist. I'm about to find the right person to help guide me through the next journey of life. And that's what I did. So I set that intention. I had that very real conversation, not only to myself, but I said it out loud in the mirror. I was like, universe, please help me find the right therapist that I need for this leg of my life. I need her, right? And I just dropped the other thing before I Googled. I was real clear in what I wanted. There were 3 things for me that were really important. One, I wanted my therapist to be a woman. It was really important to me that she was a woman because I think there are things in a lot of different areas of my life that have a different perspective because of being a woman, right? I lost my father. I'm his only daughter. I'm a black woman in the workplace. I've only, been, a girlfriend, right? So of a spouse in a heterosexual relationship. So these are things that I wanted to make sure that there was a woman of a similar background or insight who could relate to, because that was the perspective I was coming with. And I didn't want someone like faking that perspective. Like, I needed someone who was in the trenches with it, knew what it looked like. So the first thing is I knew I wanted my therapist to be a woman. The second thing is I wanted my therapist to be an African-American woman. Once again, in all those different realms, I felt like it was really important that I did not have to explain myself. Y'all, listen, we have to explain ourselves so much. So when it came to finding a therapist, I knew I wanted somebody who can identify with my journey, who could understand the ancestral roots of some of these things and generational traumas that exist. And I did not want to have to explain myself in this space. Not in the space that I'm occupying for healing, right? I got to explain myself every place else. I refuse to explain myself, the baseline of myself, in therapy. So the second thing that for me was really important, that she was an African-American woman. And the third thing for me that was really important was that she had a spiritual approach. Now, this might be a little different for people, right? I think this is where you really got to kind of tune in on what you're looking for. I have a very spiritual approach to my life, to my well-being, how I navigate. Some people have a very religious, right? There's certain doctrine of, how they go about their life that is really important and can impact them in all these additional areas. Some people don't have, any spiritual foundation, or that's not a part of their being, right? So those are things you've got to think about. I knew when it came to therapy that I had a very mind, body, spirit approach, and I needed someone to understand that. I wanted someone not to say, hey, let's practice boundaries, but also how to integrate breath work, or how to add in mindfulness to your healing journey so that everything is kind of connecting. That was something I just knew in my bones that I needed in my therapist. And I had benefited in the past from doing spiritual work with a lot of different teachers, and that was just something that gave me the vibes. So those are the things that I was looking for. So that's the baseline. So how do you actually find your therapist? So there are so many different ways to find a therapist today, right? There are sites dedicated specific to women of color to find other African American therapists. There are a lot of different groups on Instagram and Facebook. But how I find mine, I went to Psychology today. I'll put the link in case I might have blundered that. But I Googled, and I found therapists in my area. And you could actually filter out and say, hey, I wanted someone who was, Black and, spiritual. So that I appreciated, right? Because it kind of was like a dating app. I was like, here are the things that I wanted, and I wanted to filter through. Like, I didn't have time at this point. Your girl was going through it. I did not have to, time to go digging through all this stuff to try to find my therapist. So I went through, I narrowed it down, I think, to about like 3 people, and then I set up appointments. The one thing people don't tell you about finding a therapist, they almost make it sound like it's a silver bullet. Like, you find one and that's it, and this is my person forever. Now, that could be the case. I feel like that's the case with the therapist I found, but I will say treat it like dating. So when you go out and look for a therapist and you narrow down the things that are important to you, I would say, like, once again, doesn't matter if it's a male or female. Some women, for example, like my blog speaks specifically to women of color, some women might want a male's perspective in those areas. That's fine, right? Some people don't care if they're of color, if they're a person of color or not. Figure out if that's important to you. And then 3, do you want someone that integrates religion? Do you want someone to integrate spirituality? Do you want someone just to come from a pure clinical side? There's something for everyone. So you've got to know yourself enough to say, hey, these are the things that I want to be brought into my sessions based on how you hold space in the world. So get down your list, and then you go out and you search for the therapist. I would recommend throughout your searching process that you find at least 3, maybe 4 people that you really like. So go over, look at their details, check out their website. And honestly, my approach was like, let me see if I have a vibe. Like, my intuition has always been on point for a very long time. So when I was looking at the different website, I was like, when I visited these websites, how did it make me feel? And that was like a key indicator. So I did that. I had some initial consultations. Most consultations will be free, so that's good to know. So they're like 15 minutes. You get to kind of see their style. You get to see your style, and you see if you're a good match. And don't think that every person you speak to has to work. Like I said, treat it like dating. You are going in to see if this person has a connection with you and can speak to you in the way that will benefit your own growth and development. So you don't have to just pick someone to pick somebody. It might not be none of the initial three that you like. That's fine. Get back to the drawing board and continue to search. But just want to kind of throw out that as an option. So I went through that process. I landed on my therapist. Her website really spoke to me. She had information on there, about Reiki, mindfulness, all the stuff that was really important to me. Talked about her background, her approach. I really identified with her approach, and I said, I think this is the one. So we had our initial consultation, and I will tell you the other thing, once you decide a therapist, right? So you decide you're going to go to therapy. You then decide what you want in therapy. You then go search for your therapist. Then you basically have your blind dates with your therapist. Then another important step we cannot skip over is arriving to therapy prepared to do the work. I will tell you, therapy, you will get out of therapy what you bring to it. So if you're not willing to be vulnerable, then you're really going to be wasting your money. You really are. In my first session, I dived deep, deep, deep. Okay. I was like, hey, here are the issues that I'm having. You know, my dad passed. I had this horrible breakup. I am working my butt off at work. I am, my world that was so solid in all these other places came crashing down relatively at the same time, like dominoes. And your girl, who's always had her shit together, is, listen, doing a good job, faking it, but I no, this is not how I hold space in this world, and this ain't working. And I just told her, I was like, listen, I'm tired of my own shit. I'm tired of manifesting and allowing less to enter my life and be okay with it, in all areas. And those were the conversations. And so I was very transparent. And I love just the energy that she held for me to be vulnerable and ask me tough questions and give me critical ways of thinking about things that I was experiencing. And then also the other thing that I love that happened very early on in my therapy is helping me not to use just blanketed emotions for the things that I was feeling, right? So you're hear people talk about, oh, I've got all this anxiety. And and what I've experienced, a lot of my girlfriends have experienced in their therapy, they'd be like, what does that mean to you? Because it's like a kind of catchphrase, like, oh, I'm anxious, but a sign in a name. What is making you feeling? Is it really anxiety? Is it fear? Is it abandonment? Like, what is a deeper thought, emotion, and feeling? And I thought that was really important because we don't always go that deep. And she really encouraged me to go deep. So I met her a year and a half ago, and she is still my therapist. When I initially went to therapist, like I said, I was very clear that, one, I knew my spiritual world was shaky, right? Because I was so grounded in my spirituality. My dad passed away, and that really kind of rocked me for some time. And when these other things started to happen, I was like, I don't like this feeling. I feel uneasy. I feel unsettled. I'm not used to feeling like this. We got to work. And I knew, I said, listen, once again, I did not come to play. I did not come to play, right? I did not come to be 60, 70 years old, still playing around with my own bullshit and believing my own lies. Like, that is not where I was. I was clear that I wanted different and that I was deserving of different. Not only different, but the best. So that's what I set out. In my initial first couple of months of therapy, I'm not going to hold you. I went to therapy 2 times a week, weekly. Oh, I made an investment in myself. And my therapist is amazing, but she wasn't cheap. And that was the most significant investment I had made over a consistent period of time in my entire adult life. And for me, I was willing to sacrifice anything to make sure that I had that time to get me through and navigate through things that either were happening in the moment or happening leading up to the moment that for me, once again, left me feeling unshaky. So that was me for the first couple of months. And then after that, it was like, okay, I got my rhythm. I know what I'm doing now. And I kind of enjoyed that flow. And then it went from, once a week, and then it went to every other week, and now it's max. My new max is no more than a 2-week gap, right, between therapy, and it's really kind of work and evolving. And I will tell you, this is how committed I am to therapy. So last year I got a financial advisor, and we're going through and I'll take my financial advisor to another Black firm that has been phenomenal in helping me on my journey. And one of the things is we're doing the intake and we're talking about like the things that are important to you. The first thing I said is the most important financial investment that I have going on right now for me, like just like my personal life, is therapy. And I'm not willing to cut back on that. And that was big for me, right? Your girl who was always frugal growing up. If you knew me, I was cheap. To say, no, listen, I don't care how much it costs. Listen, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm so happy that I made that commitment to myself. So here I am a year and a half after, and I still love my therapist. And every time I have therapy, I leave like feeling so much lighter and smiling and just beaming from just who I am. And I tell my friends, listen, this past year and a half, like, all these things that happened really kicked off my spiritual awakening. And that's a whole different episode. But I would say going through my spiritual awakening, having my entire world stripped down in all ways, right? My identity, what I wanted, everything fell apart in the way it needed to, so that I then could redefine what it is that I wanted, and to be honest and intentional about building up the life that I wanted, and not society or anyone else programmed into me, right? So it was elimination of all that. And what's dope about therapy is that I had the opportunity to really cultivate who I am as a person. And I tell my friends all the time during that spiritual awakening journey that they were so key in my support system, right? They were key. But I also say, but I would not be here operating in the way that I'm operating if I didn't have therapy, period. Like, my support system is awesome, but my therapist was the gateway for helping me to see my own bullshit, helping me to release anger, hurt, resentment, shame, all those deep, dark words that people don't want to have, an issue with saying. I felt so privileged to be able to let that burden down. And my support system would have been awesome. They still would have been there cheering me along, but I would have been lost trying to figure that out, right? So I think it's important, right, to really think about that. And lastly, kind of what I want to end on is, I know there's people out here who are wondering, should I invest in therapy? Can I afford it? All this other stuff. Number one, there's a sliding scale in almost every state for therapy. So if you're worried about being a financial thing, almost everybody offers some type of sliding scale. So don't let that be your gateway. The second thing is, if you're willing to invest in your hair, you got Netflix, Hulu, HBO, all these other, nice to-dos. Nothing is worth more than your own mental and spiritual well-being, period. I mean, listen, I like me some Louis, Gucci, whatever, right? But none of that means anything if the vessel that it's on is not taken care of. And it's so easy to push back on the back burner our mental or spiritual, health. But here's the thing I know for certain, especially for people of color, which is the longer we take to address the things that are impacting our ability to be successful in life and the things that are weighing us down, the harder it is going to be later down the line, because all those things are going to come crashing back. They don't disappear. Your anxiety doesn't disappear. Your shame, your hurt, your resentment, none of that just magically disappears just because you don't want to address it. It bottles up. It bottles up to cancer, to mental health, to obesity, anger. Like, all these other things become a byproduct. Anxiety, insomnia, everything becomes a byproduct because we're not addressing the things that are really holding us back. And therapy really gave me an opportunity to let so much stuff go. And just through conversation, it's amazing. I will tell you, my journey has been amazing and so fast just because I was willing to release. I was like, I don't have to be hooked to this narrative. And it's not the road does not look like this. It's going to be up, down. You're going to have a setback. You're going to reset. It's a journey like anything else. But you're worth that journey. You're worth that investment. So if you're thinking about it, this is your sign. Go experience therapy for sure. You're worth the investment. And it's so easy to say I don't have the time. Listen, I meet with my therapist via Skype. Right? We're on our Zoom calls, meeting for therapy. You don't have to go in. Like, you're in post-COVID. There's so many different ways you can engage with your therapist that will work for you. So the excuses are gone. And like I said, I understand the whole space that it's going to take certain people time to figure out, yeah, maybe I'm ready for it. But also, if I realized how much benefit I would have received from therapy, I would have started it decades sooner, for sure. Because who I am a year and a half from now, like from the start of therapy, is phenomenal. Imagine the type of maverick I would have been to start therapy at 18 or 21 or 25. My life experience would have been completely different. The way I treat myself, the way I love on myself, the way I cherish myself, the way I have erected boundaries for others is all a product of therapy. And I think that hopefully that too helps to really kind of connect the dots of you can wait, but in your waiting, you're missing out on having a better experience of what you're getting out of life, right? So it's never too late to start. I encourage everyone to find out their therapist, right? So who I have is perfect for me. Whoever you need, set that attention. You know what you need, and go out and seek and hold space for someone to meet those needs. And whether it be in your budget, your, like I said, all these different factors, right? I want to make sure their cost this much. I want to make sure that they're of color, a person of color. I want to make sure they're a woman, female, male, whatever, transgender, any of the things that are important to you, right? In your experience, there is a therapist out there that can specifically speak to you, right? So there are so many voices, and once again, I think that's the lovely thing about, you know, not nobody's going to fit in a box. So find therapists that don't fit in a box. That was my thing, right? That worked well for me. So that was my spiel on therapy. Hopefully everyone got some nuggets, some helpful nuggets about therapy. I'm going to put in the bottom a couple of links that were beneficial for me in my journey. And I really want you guys to add some comments. I'm interested to know about your journeys, anybody who's starting, any questions you might have. Just put them in the bottom, right? This is a community. We are about healing each other. We're about holding space for each other's growth. And I hope this message finds you well. And I wish you the best on your healing journey, because, baby, you're worth it. Thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. Iman.